You're looking good, and it feels good to be with you today. Hello, I'm Kendall Bryan Hunter, author of this book, Consider My Servant Job, and this is News with the Eyes of Faith, where I talk about news from the perspective of Christ and the doctrine of Christ. For the first time, Joe Biden is no longer president. I wish him well on a human level. I'm grateful that he was public spirited and ran for office. You have to acknowledge the damage he did to the nation and the country, and sort of lowering the standards for the qualification for president. He clearly was mentally, he was not there. We all saw it. Some people were in denial. So it's a new chapter. It's a new day. And here's just one pull quote from President Trump's second inaugural speech. And remember, this is the second time in American history where this has happened. The other was with President Grover Cleveland. Now, it's interesting. In countries like Canada, they tend to flip-flop presidents. One's Anglophonic, the other one's Francophonic. And so people flip-flop being prime minister, but it's not here. You tend to go president one or two terms here. I think I mentioned on a previous one, since World War II, we flip-flop presidents with parties, but beforehand you'd have decades where the same party would remain in power with the presidency, probably because Congress had a little bit more power, government was smaller. We were facing different threats back then, but yeah, that's an interesting change. Yes, I'm putting my history degree to work. So the inauguration, here's a quote: "In America, the impossible is what we do best." Sounds a little bit like President Nelson's book, Accomplishing the Impossible, but I'm not implying anything. So this is from a Twitter account. It's called America Status. I have a link to it. So on day one, President Trump rescinded 78 Biden-era executive actions, declared a national emergency at the southern border, ended birthright citizenship of illegal aliens, pardoned nearly 1,500 January 6, 2021 prisoners, withdrew from the World Health Organization, withdrew from the Paris Climate Agreement, froze federal hiring, ended GEI programs in the federal government, delayed the TikTok ban, designated cartels and gangs as terrorist groups, shut down the CBP One App, that's the immigration one where people were using it to scam the system, mandated federal employees to return to work in person, which Musk has been doing, established two federally recognized gender as male and female. That's an important lesson. This is a life hack. First of all, this is the second time being president. It's interesting because he had a gap and is able to rethink things and come up with a better game plan than he had with the first time. But also the country had changed between 2016 and now. But this is an important life lesson. Always show up with a game plan. If you have a game plan, you have the inertia. You're in control, and the best idea wins. You show up to a meeting, and most people just kind of show up there, and they're groping around in a flock. This is like civic school, but also in church meetings. The church teaches you to have an agenda, show up there, and you send out an agenda a couple days beforehand for comment, and then you do follow it. That's what you do. 2 days or 3 days before the meeting, you send out an email and agenda to your presidency. Give them time to comment. You send it back to your secretary, and then the secretary finalizes the agenda. You work from that, and you stick to that, and you'll be amazed how productive you are. The same thing happened in the Constitutional Convention in 1787. James Madison showed up with a game plan. This is a book. It's called The Anti-Federalist Papers of the Constitutional Convention and Constitutional Convention Debates. So you have the Federalist Papers, which is key thing if you're getting a degree in history or law. This is the anti-federal. So this is the other side of it. This is a mentor version. There's different versions of it that go by similar names. But right here, it was proposed by Randolph, but the idea was James Madison. You see right there, he has point 1, 2, 3, 4. He had a game plan up to point number 15 right there. And because he had a game plan, he had the inertia. In fact, our Constitution is largely based upon this game plan. If you ever saw the movie More Perfect Union, it was put out by Brigham Young University, and I highly recommend it. Not because I'm an alumnus, but because it's a good movie. And it talks about the Constitutional Convention. It was released around 1987 when we had the bicentennial of the Constitution. And you talk about it is that Thomas Jefferson sent James Madison a trunk full of books. James Madison devoured and synthesized those books, came up with this was it 16-point game plan, and that became the basis for the Constitution. You had a similar thing happen back in 1994 with Newt Gingrich and the contract with America. Newt Gingrich had a specific contract with America. He nationalized the election because normally congressional elections, you just focus on the local issues. You bring back the pork. All politics is local, Tip O'Neill said. Newt Gingrich broke the frame. I'm going to talk about reframing things. He broke the frame, said, okay, let's make this a national thing. So he had an agenda. He had a little punch card saying, okay, this is the contract with America. This is what we're going to get passed. See, it works. You show up with an agenda and a game plan, and it works. Yeah, you're going to get resistance. The half a loaf is better than no loaf. A living dog is better than a dead lion, as the Bible says. But you'll get stuff done and things will go your way, even though it's not perfect. But you always show up with a game plan. Best idea wins, and most people don't have a game plan. So I don't have a lot to say. It's an unfolding. It's amazing to watch the reaction, the counter-reaction, the insanity. The Democrats still don't realize they're following the old playbook. They're still looking out they're watching yesterday's episode of the TV series. And they're not dealing with it today, so they're using the old geek tactics. Elon Musk, he made that speech where he just put his hand on his heart and he did that. Said Hitler, look up Godwin's law. And you saw the image, but there was no audio attached to it. So it was a clear case of dropping the context. And I put a link to the audio. It's on YouTube, and you hear that, and what he's saying is expressing his love. Now, it's the people who posted that image knew full well that this was dishonest reporting. That's why newspapers and traditional media is collapsing. That's why people like me, other Joe Rogan, these podcasters, why we're dominating now, because we're not playing by the old playbook. We're playing by the new playbook. The days of Edward R. Murrow and Walter Cronkite, those have dissipated into swamp gas. That's no longer the reality. And we're catching people. It's funny, you see a lot of these clips where, I think the funniest one was Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. She did that, and it's like, oh, this guy's Hitler. And so what Elon Musk did is he posted an image of her doing the same gesture. It's like, is this you? And then people have been really nice, showing pictures of Hitler touring the BMW plants. Perfect. That's perfect persuasion because it's dishonest. We have policy. They have insults. Everyone is Hitler. That's a new catchphrase you should use. This is the old everyone's Hitler argument. Everyone is Hitler argument. Remember that. Write that down. It's going to come handy in the future. If you're ever in a debate, or if you run for office, remember that. Someone does that, just say, oh, this is the old everyone is Hitler argument. So I want to talk a little bit about something, is that I certainly have a political point of view, but we have to pay attention to everything. We have two eyes, or most of us do, and you see things from the left and the right side, and you just integrate it in your brain. You have to see both sides of the issue. People have been complaining about Trump's pardons, but they're absolutely crypt and coffin silent about Joe Biden's pardons, pardoning his son, pardoning his family. Popes during the Middle Ages, the Borgia popes, they used to do that to their families, grant dispensations and indulgences to their families. So it's the same thing. And this is not a slur against Catholics. This is just a historical reality. I've read every page of Thomas Aquinas' Summa Theologica. I respect the work. I know that we have issues with the child abuse, with Catholicism. I'm against infant baptism. I'm against Trinity. I will donate. I know that the church donates money to Catholic World Relief and other charities because they're more efficient than having a redundant organization, and I sustain that. But yeah, this is stuff they did, is just grant pardons. This is an abuse of power. Pardoning Fauci. If he was innocent, you wouldn't need to pardon him. And pardons only cover federal crimes. They don't cover state crimes or federalism, 10th Amendment. So be honest about it. The problem is, how do we get to such a situation where we're having this? What happened to the system we're using where we ended this thing? We're having Trump, Biden, Trump, Bush, Clinton, Bush. we're having the system, and it's a systemic problem. It's not a personality problem. It's not a self-esteem problem. You need to think about that, and that's a level of thinking we're not used to thinking. Well, just sit back, grab a bag of popcorn, and watch your social media feed. It's just wonderful to watch this. I'm from California. Okay, think about this. Pretend your political party is a scientific theory. And you judge a scientific theory by the results it gives, if it's good at predicting. So I went from California, which is a one-party state, and I live in Utah, which is also a one-party state. Utah has silicon slopes, and California is an incinerator. Okay, which political system gives you the best results? Remember, look things with both your eyes, left and right, integrate them in your brain. So just pay attention to what's going on, and always reach out to your friends who are of the other party. You've probably had in your ward people don't show up to church because Trump won the election. Now, it's not about Trump, it's about his executive order on genders, it's LGBTQ issues. Always reach out to them. This is a case where biting your tongue is the best tactic to use. Just listen to them talk and don't judge them, and don't get in an argument. Just let them talk and make sure the relationship is as important as the politics. Well, finally, the church issued a statement on the series American Primeval. Now, I haven't watched it. I have a degree in history, so I prefer the musty tomes. I'm reading Wilfred Woodruff's journal. I'm in 1858 right now. Just finished up 1857. Now reading 1858. So I'm paying attention to the primary sources and secondary sources. It's the church's statement is what you'd expect. So use good history, not National Enquirer. The church talks about it. I grew up knowing about it. There wasn't anything secret. There's nothing you can do about it. So feeling angry is the only way out is to forgive people. So I talk a little bit about I have on my father's side. I'm related to Isaac Kate. On my mother's side, I'm related to William Dane. So I'm related to I'm a heritage member. So just to be transparent with you, but I just forgive everyone. I'm also descendant of Thomas McBride, who was killed at Hans Mill. So I got a lot of stuff going on in my family history. I can't disentangle myself. It's there. So that's on the church news. Deseret News had this article and a link to a video, which I watched. The article is called The Surprising Hope This Gay Atheist Sees in the Church of Jesus Christ. I recommend watching it. I put a link there. It talked about the good things the Church of Jesus Christ is doing with the we have the Utah Compact on Inauguration, the Utah Compromise with the LGBTQ issues. And remember, the issue is, pretend it's a scientific theory. Does it work? Now, is the approach that the church is using and Utah is using, is it working? Is the Utah Compact working, or do we need to revise it? Is the Utah Compromise working, or do we need to revise it? Well, he's grateful for it, and you always accept compliment, and it's important feedback to know with LGBTQ people how we're working with Tom Christofferson and other LGBTQ members who have written books. Make sure that you're paying attention to them and hearing their point of view. That's one of Stephen R. Covey's 7 Habits. That's part of your success library, is the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Grateful for the compliment, but I got this question, just so think about this. Do we need affirmation from other people, or actually not so much affirmation or verification? Now, you always pay attention to feedback. D. Todd Christofferson spoke about that, about receiving correction and chastisement. But here's a question. Before you believe a doctrine revealed through Joseph Smith, do you need to find a C.S. Lewis quote that backs it up? Do you need validation from C.S. Lewis to believe something that's in the restored gospel? Or Mother Teresa, or Dietrich Bonhoeffer, or someone else? If you do, I believe that that's a problem. The church needs to stand independent, and this generation will have the Savior's words through Joseph Smith. So, like I said, it's the 2 eyes. I'm grateful for the compliment, but pay attention that you're not becoming dependent upon people liking you, men pleasers, as Paul talks about in the New Testament. Roche, his name was Roche, who's the gay atheist. I think it's interesting, the correlation between homosexuality and atheism. He supports the Christianity or Christian ideals, but he's an atheist. And is this compartmentalizing? Once again, the fruits and the roots. Does a tree give you good fruits? If the tree gives you good fruits, then by modus tollens, it's a good tree. So if Christianity works, why aren't you a Christian? If being a conservative gives you Silicon Slopes in Utah and being a liberal gives you an incinerator in Southern California, there's going to be a shortage of lumber as people are going to leave. People are going to rebuild, buy stock in Lowe's and Home Depot. Just kidding, I'm not a stock advisor, so remember, you don't take advice from some guy on the internet, but just pay attention to the economics. So having said all this criticism, like I said, okay, we thank you for the compliment. It's good feedback. There's a problem if we need validation, verification from someone. I think you're coming from an incoherent position, but I will work with you. I will completely 100% work with you. I'll drop what I'm doing to work with you because it's working, because I think there's a utilitarian and practical aspect to this. That's sort of the news. Let me do the life hacks section of this. We're getting a little bit short. I know I've been going long in these other ones just because there's been a lot of news. Here's the life hack section. Oh, I needed a prop, and I forgot to get the prop. Let me get the prop. Okay, the props are being a little bit difficult. Now, like I said, I keep this low-key, sort of the flea market version of podcast. I don't do a theme song. I do not sell bobbleheads. It's just you, me, and the truth here. I'm going to talk about something that's called the blank sermon. This is about reframing. So, there was a church leader named Jedediah Grant, and he is the father of Heber J. Grant. Christmas is legal on this podcast. And so he was out doing missionary work, and what happened, he found this group of people in a tavern. They talked, said, okay, you come back here later tonight, and we'll let you preach. But what we'll do is we won't give you the subject of the sermon. We'll hand it to you on a piece of paper, and we just want you to talk right extemporaneously. So Elder Heber J. or Jedediah M. Grant agreed to that. So he came back there. They put the table in the center of the room. Heber J. Grant, or Brother Grant, got up on the table, so he handed the piece of paper. So Jedediah M. Grant took the paper and opened it, and the paper was blank. So you see the setup. This is what Jedediah M. Grant did. He took the paper and held it up and said, "Now we come here to have this debate, and you're going to discuss what was written on the paper, and you handed me a blank piece of paper. You all believe in a God without body parts and passions. In my estimation, such a God would be a blank, just like this piece of paper. You believe in a church without prophets and apostles. In my estimation, such a church would be a blank, just like this piece of paper." Now, what he did is that is probably one of the best examples of reframing. First of all, it shows you God will give you inspiration in the moment. You need to develop the capacity to think quick on your feet. But what Heber J. Grant did is he has reframed. Now, he's handed a frame. The frame is, you're going to be a butt of this joke, and we're going to set you up to look stupid. So what Heber J. Grant did is he took this frame, or the framing they gave him, and he broke the frame. And he turned it into a little bit of a boomerang and threw it right back at them. And this is called reductio ad absurdum in logic, in high logic. That's the Latin term, reductio ad absurdum, reduced to an absurdity. Rush Limbaugh used to call this illustrating absurdity by being absurd. Scott Adams calls it embrace and amplify. So someone hands you something, you twist it back right at them and just make them look worse. But he didn't accept it, and he was able to turn it back on them. I'm not sure what the result was, but certainly it's an important. That's another life lesson: is that when someone does something, you reframe it. There's a type of argument. You can handle an argument on the knowledge level with the factual discussions, or you handle the argument on the wisdom level, and you win on the wisdom level. This is also called what Scott Adams calls the high ground maneuver. Here's another example. David A. Bednar was meeting with missionaries. And when the missionaries asked him what the worst sin was that you could commit. Well, that's straightforward. It's in the Book of Mormon. The Book of Alma talks about it. It's the sin associated with perdition. Then you have a murder, then adultery. So there's no confusing about it. If someone asked us, like, how come you're not reading the Book of Mormon? That's one way to answer the question. But this is how Elder Bednar answered the question. The worst sin you can commit is one you think you can get away with. You notice how you're breaking the frame is that you're having a factual discussion, but you're asking this for a reason. You're just playing games with the church, with the commandments, giving into an appetite and trying to grab a slippery or a slimy argument that slips through your fingers to get away with what you're doing. So again, I'd like to talk about some examples of this. This is for people who, political science people, or people who are going to law school. You see this on congressional investigations. They'll get a heated discussion and say, answer the question, yes or no. So how do you respond to that? One thing is you stop talking. This is the Sun Tzu Wu Wei approach. You stop talking, you let them talk. Give them enough rope to hang themselves with. This is what good talk show hosts do. When someone's a lunatic, it's just funny. Rush Limbaugh, again, if you remember Rita X from Rush Limbaugh, you just let her talk because it's just absolutely entertaining. But you stop talking. When they stop talking, you say, I'd like to answer your question, but you keep interrupting me. And then you stop and just let them talk again. Another way to do that, if they keep interrupting you, another good tactic is to say, just stop talking. Are you finished? So you sound like an adult and they sound like a little kid. But another way to respond to that is when they say, answer the question yes or no. Say, this is toxic communication. This type of toxicity is why people hate Congress. I'm not accusing you of anything, but do you do this to your staffers? You stop talking. Now, they're going to get mad at you and they're going to trash talk you, but you're going to have people of your own political party, and the American people are just going to love the way you talk to them. So, yeah, you're being rude, and didn't your mama teach you nothing? And if you didn't have a mom, did you have a grandma who taught you that? Are you trying to belittle me into saying something that isn't true? Here's another one. People says when you respond, say, oh, well, that doesn't mean anything. And that's just a slogan. That's a way of deflecting stuff without presenting an argument. That's just an assertion. And one way to just ask one question, okay, why do you say that? Another thing to do is that a deflection tactic? There's two books called Getting the Yes and Getting Past No. I think it's by F.R.Y. Getting to Yes, Getting Past No. And they talk about negotiations. And one of the things they suggest is someone's just using a tactic on you, you call them on it. Oh, or you're using that tactic again? Well, this is the third time you use this tactic. And don't be afraid to back away from a discussion or to block someone. I was naive once, thought, okay, yeah, you're going to be a friend to everyone. I never met a man I didn't like. Some people are toxic and vicious, and that's the healthiest thing you can do is to separate yourself from toxicity. And you put their names on the temple prayer roll. Keep us Christian. This is a religious podcast. Other times, sometimes people say, well, why don't you do something? Or can we count on you to do something? You say, oh, once again, you just say, okay, I feel like you're manipulating me when you do that. I'm willing to work with you, but that felt like we're not getting an honest conversation. So I'm going to step back. That's another Stephen R. Covey habit. Think win-win or no deal. Willing to break off something, break off a conversation or relationship if it gets toxic. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's over there. I can't grab it. Well, here, I'll grab it. Oh, yeah, I can't grab it. It's at the bottom of my stack of books, so I was moving my books around. So 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. I met him twice. First day in the MTC, this is Sunday, so you're really disoriented, discombobulated, and we go to a large group meeting and didn't realize at the time, but yeah, that was Stephen Covey giving us 7 Habits of Highly Effective Missionaries, probably for free. There's a certain, when you get rich at a certain threshold, you just hand out stuff like Halloween candies, like you just don't care. You have enough money to do whatever you want. And then I met him later at BYU during a Freedom Festival where Glenn Beck was speaking, and stood a couple of feet away from him. It was kind of fun. He's been a good influence in my life. But Seek first to understand, then be understood. Think win-win or no deal. Here's the last thing: is you'll see this on debates. So someone will get up there and say, "I have this." One of the debaters will be a panel of like 5 candidates, and I have this idea, and anyone here and the candidate and the other candidates support this idea, raise your hand. So under no circumstances do you raise your hand. And this is the reason why. Because what it does is it makes you look like the tag-along. Makes you look like the Johnny-come-lately. It puts you in a subservient position. It makes a person who says, I have this, all of you raise your hand. It makes you look like this person's the alpha chimpanzee, and it puts them in the dominant position. So under no circumstances do you raise your hand. You just sit there, and then the moderator will ask you, well, why didn't you raise your hand? And then you respond, we're here to have a debate about the issues, not play a game of duck, duck, goose. And then what you do is throughout the rest of the debate, you keep using expression, oh, this is sort of a goosey idea again. Don't be a silly goose. We're not playing duck, duck, goose. We're here to have a serious debate of the issues. And that comes back from Aristotle. In his book on rhetoric, the translation I had is when someone is earnest, you be jocular, and if someone's jocular, you be earnest. When someone's being serious, you be funny. When someone's being funny, you be serious. And he uses a shifting ground tactic on them. But think about these reframes as you're dealing with stuff. When you show up to work and you have a toxic coworker, have you set patterns that need to be rethought? Do you need to change your approach with someone? So that's my gift to you today, is think about reframing things and not be a victim. And that's news with the eyes of faith. Thank you.